There is no shortage of gardening tasks and maintenance at this time of year, from pruning, mulching, adding perennials, planting and planting spring bulbs, dividing perennials. The list is endless. So let's see what we can tackle this weekend. The first task I decided to tackle was to mow the lawn because I hadn't been able to get to it in the past few weeks and the grass was getting pretty long. It was still a little bit too wet actually, and I struggled in a little corner next to the sofa that stayed pretty wet, but we managed. And I really love using the hand mower because it is lightweight, it is perfect for a small garden, it's also easy to store, and we've been getting by really nicely with it. Throughout winter, the grass isn't going to grow, so this is probably the last mow of the season before spring hits again. For corners and for hard to reach areas, I like to use my streamer. I don't know if you can tell, but that is looking so much better. But now we have to clean up a little bit the terrace. And yes, more leaves have fallen. It is a very recurring task in the garden to clean up leaves from the lawn or from paved areas like this terrace, but it is an amazing free resource. These can go either in the compost. What I'm going to do with these is put them directly at the bottom of my edges. This is what I do every year. I use grass cuttings or all the leaves that fall around to basically mulch. That helps retain moisture, it's free, and over time it feeds the edging, and it's been working pretty nicely so far. I couldn't be without that little brush and broom. They're heavy duty. I've had it for years and it's great. The brush is really stiff and this is a very thoughtful garden gift. So definitely a good Christmas gift idea if you're already on the hunt. The next priority on my list was to tackle the roof shed and clean the gutter. This is something I hadn't gotten to since last year, and there was a lot that had accumulated on the roof. And it had actually started to cause some, I think, moisture issues in the shed, so it was high time to clear that away. So I pulled out all the ladders that we had in the house and got to work. And I used a broom and a leaf rake, everything I had on hand, to try to reach all that debris that had essentially started forming compost. So it was actually much harder than it looks to scrape everything off the roof and just get it clean. Okay, so to reach our faraway corner, we got our extendable saw and then fastened it to the rake, the leaf rake, and that is pretty much doing the trick. There's moss, there are debris. We even found, I mean, the tiles on the roof are fine, but these look like debris essentially from when the roof was put together. And we found like so many, this is from the neighbors to be in the way, but all of this was on the roof, like really thick branches, and then of course of it we've pushed down to the ground, so I'll have to clean up all this area. I mean, it's really good compost at this stage. We eventually managed to get most of it off. There's still a little patch there that would benefit from getting on the roof and use a blower perhaps, but we might get to that another time. Next, I really wanted to tackle the grapevine situation. Last year, I had trained it on the shed to create a lovely wall of greenery, and we even had this year some ripening grapes. It was lovely, but it had started the climb onto that oak tree that we have. That's actually the neighbor's tree, but it's very close to the fence line, so essentially we get most of the leaves in our lawn. I actually used some of these grapevine cuttings to style an amaryllis arrangement that we did last week. I think it turned out lovely, and it is actually blooming right now. And then the big cleanup started. There was so much debris from the grapevine, from the tree, that everything needed a good clean and a good reset. And as temperatures are cooling off and there's less to forage for birds, even though we don't get a lot of snow here, I still like to refill my bird feeders regularly, and I love giving them those little fat balls. They go crazy for it. I did try to give them some apple also, thinking that that might be a good idea. I ended up cutting it. It hasn't been really popular, so we'll stick to the fat balls. So think about topping up your feeders and also adding bird houses to provide a safe nesting space for them. It's also great to leave some leaves and some little twigs on hand in a little quiet corner of the garden so that you can provide birds with nesting materials. And that also makes a great house for hedgehogs, actually. I know I always go on about it, but if you have plants like dahlias or cosmos or any cut and come again flower, keep deadheading, because these plants will go on until the frosts. And the more you cut off the spent blooms, the more blooms you're going to get. And right now we're still harvesting a lot of wonderful dahlia blooms, for example. The verbena is still going strong. The repeat flowering roses are enjoying the cooler weather. We still have a couple of cosmos hanging on. So there's still a lot to harvest from the garden if you keep up with that basic deadheading task. But on the other hand, it's also a great time to start letting things run to seed if you want to be able to collect those seeds and then resow them next year. So again, for things like cosmos or any annuals, leave them to run to seed and either harvest the seed or leave them to self-seed so that you can perpetuate your crop that way. It's actually very easy to save seeds, but remember, moisture is your enemy, so do make sure they are fully dry before you store them. Another recurring task would be to weed. Weed your borders, weed your containers, weed your grass. Keep on top of weeding, because we still have warm temperatures and plants are still growing, and it can get out of hand if you don't keep up. And I know my garden does need a good weed right now, especially in the lawn. I did get a really handy weeder from Fisker that I love, and I have been trying to save my lawn from dandelions. Whoa, there must be, what, 100 dandelions in there? Amaryllis are one of my favorite blooms for Christmas, and right now in October is a great time to plant them up so you'll have blooms for Christmas, because they typically take a couple of weeks to start budding up, and once a bud is formed, it's another couple of weeks before bloom. So for blooms around Christmas time, you need to start planting back right now in October. So I do have a couple of amaryllis from last year actually that I forgot in my garage because I wanted them to enter dormancy so that they can trigger a bloom cycle again. They are very spindly. They have started growing, and you can see from the lack of light the leaves are white. So today I want to repot these with fresh compost, fertilize them. I have with me some pelletized fertilizer, and I'm hoping then by placing them in a warm spot with indirect sunlight into my house that they'll start blooming again. But this is looking good. We have a strong LC root system. I'm just going to remove the old compost and then we'll repot it. So I'm aiming for something like this. No soil, and we're going to repot in fresh compost. Carefully replacing all the roots. These are very small, so they're definitely not going to bloom this year, but I'll pot them on anyway and grow them on and see if next year maybe they'll be able to bloom. They're looking so much better already. Actually, the same containers turned out to be perfect because you want about 2 finger spacing between the bulb and the edge of the containers because these like to be root bound, so to be really tight in the pot. So fingers crossed for blooms this Christmas. I hope you bring amaryllis into your home. I think they are just the loveliest flower for the hosting and holiday season. I wanted to show you the arrangement that we put together in the last vlog. It is in full bloom and I love this deep, rich red color. It is the perfect way to bring the Christmas spirit in my home. If you are planning to add more perennials to your garden, fall is a great time to do so because soil temperatures are still high enough that the plants will have time to establish before winter. Not only is it a great time to plant, but you can also find great deals at your local garden centers or nursery that will be doing sales or discount on some unsold stock. This is how I got a lot of new perennials for the garden, some of which we've already planted, but I still do have a couple of echinaceas that I want to add in the garden. September, October, well, until your ground isn't frozen, essentially you can also divide existing perennials that you had in your garden to rejuvenate the plants but also create more plants for free. I did it a couple of years ago with my sedum, Autumn Joy, which I love, and one plant became 4 plants now in the garden, and it's a good thing to do regularly to keep your plants healthy. You can divide, for example, sedum, salvias, verbena, asters, geraniums, gladiolus, for example, or agapanthus. Either replant them somewhere else in your garden or, of course, give them to friends, neighbors, family, and that's a cost-free way to get more plants into your gardens. Fall is also a great time to order and then plant your spring bulbs for blooms the following spring. Essentially everywhere you'll see bulbs on sale, and if you don't have some already, I highly recommend adding some to your gardens. They provide for early blooms. They're available in a range of varieties and colors. You can get blooms as early as January, for example, if you go for crocuses, and then kick in your narcissus from February onwards. And of course, don't forget your tulips, your muscari, your alliums. They come in so many beautiful colors and shapes. So I'll leave a couple of videos linked if you want inspiration on what to plant in your gardens. Right now I am planning my own planting plan for the spring bulbs for the show for next year. Probably will be a short, stay tuned for that, and then we'll have an all planting video dedicated to spring bulbs. And of course, the housekeeping has to continue. And by housekeeping, I mean all those regular tasks on top of deadheading and weeding. For example, feeding your containers, feeding your plants. They will benefit from one last feed in autumn. It's also great to top up mulch in your containers, in your flower beds. It's going to protect the roots of your plants from frost damage. It's going to keep the ground moist. It's also going to prevent weed regrowth. There are a lot of benefits to mulching, so keep up on top of that too. So that is a lot. That is a lot to do and then to keep up with, because a lot of these tasks and jobs are recurring. What are you doing? Excuse me, dear sir. Okay. All right, Simba is joining us. Of course, you can also decorate for fall and winter. This is something that I love to do every year. I have plenty of videos on the topic. You can make a wreath, you can make seasonal containers, and make sure that there's always something beautiful to look at in your garden. So I'll link a couple of videos and playlists if you're interested to know what you can do to keep your garden interesting looking year-round. I hope you enjoyed today's video and that you found it helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye!